Hello. Well, this is an episode we've been waiting for because we've gone through this incredible memoir. Just, I can't say enough good things about it. So beautifully written and so
Hmm.
soulful and deep and wonderful. And I was so lucky to have met Susan in person, which is rare. So all that said, I want to welcome Susan Kyo Ito, author of I Would Meet You Anywhere. Oh, such a great book.
Yay. I have the jealous. I'm still jealous I didn't meet you in person, but here you
I
are.
forgot my copy. I was going to hold mine up, but I left it
We'll
upstairs.
hold it up for you. Go to YouTube. You
Okay.
can see us holding it up. We're
And
gonna miss this book. This is a loved book.
Uh, and I'm
It is
so glad. I think you have a copy coming your way, Louise. But Susan gave me a
a signed
signed
copy.
copy, so I felt free to. I always use highlighters and so anyway, I'm so glad to have a clean copy
Yes.
that
Oh, I can't
that.
wait to get mine. I know mine's all bent up and dog-eared and written in like exclamation points.
I need to
Hmm.
send you a signed copy. I will do that.
Yes.
Yes, I will definitely do that. You need to have one.
And we're just so you've been really rocking the adoptee world with this, with your book. And do you want to what's that been like? Because you've been on the road and at meeting people, and how's that been like for you, you know,
It's
in your
been,
life as well?
it's been a little overwhelming, but mostly fantastic and just incredible. It's been amazing meeting adoptees everywhere. Every time I do an event, I'll ask how many adoptees are here in the room. And sometimes, like when I was in Seattle, it was the majority of the audience. There was like probably 50 or 60 people there, and the
Wow.
majority were adopted people. So that was very cool. And then sometimes it's none. And
Have,
sometimes
was this the first time you'd been around a lot of adoptees? Like, have you gone to any kind of adoptee retreats
oh, you
or
mean with
anything?
the book or in general in my
In,
life?
in general, like, was this the first time that you had? Oh no, I mean you've been. I don't mean. I mean like adoptee conferences, and I know you've had
Oh,
like
yeah.
little.
I've been to many. I've been
Oh,
to
okay.
many. I first started going, I think, to the American Adoption Congress,
Mm.
AAC back in the, I don't know when's, maybe the 90s, maybe the 80s. Um,
That you talked about in the book. I know.
yeah, and no, I've been to a lot of adoptee gatherings, so that wasn't a new thing, but it's really nice
Hmm.
being out with the book. But I have to say, I also love, and I'm shocked to have non-adoptee audiences.
Yeah.
Like, really? You're interested in this? That's been really very gratifying and very moving to me. One, that they're interested in adoptee experience.
Yeah.
Two, they're actually learning things, which I'm really happy about. Things that I think are kind of basic for us, basic
Right.
ideas around adoption. And then I've been hearing a lot that people are resonating, even though they do not share any of the experience that I've had, that it's resonating anyway, because people are feeling like for anyone who's felt like an outsider
Hmm.
or needing a sense of belonging
Mhm.
or finding a place within your family or whatever. I don't know. It's like it's been that's been a really surprising thing to me, to find that non-adopted audiences are resonating deeply, which I was not expecting at
Yeah,
all.
that I was wondering, like, are they hearing through it all what you're saying about adoption and the
Yes.
trauma and because sometimes
Yes.
there's pushback from non-adoptees
Yeah.
about that.
Yes. And I think especially, and I think maybe because I do have such strong and positive feelings about my adoptive family, um, it feels somehow safer for
Yeah.
people. Like, oh, and I think the fact that, oh, even though she had a close relationship with her adoptive family, oh, she still wanted to know, she still wanted to search. These things were still important. The relationship was still important,
Yeah.
even though, and that one does not negate the other. And I think that's been very illuminating for a lot of readers, which I'm glad about, you
I
know.
am too, to hear this. We were interviewed on a podcast yesterday that will come
Yeah.
out later for mental health. And I was telling the man, you can, because he had the same, he also doesn't have the narrative and he had to learn about it. And he's not in our group, right? And so he was saying, oh, you have, what do people say? You know, you should be lucky, or it's a nice, like, I just thought it was a nice thing. But I said, well, you can have both. You can have a nice thing and want to know, you know,
Yeah,
and want to know. Maybe that is a
And
good,
have trauma,
and
I
have
mean, that
trauma.
all the
it doesn't
things.
negate the initial trauma,
No,
that,
Well, initial trauma and ongoing trauma.
right,
ongoing
Ongoing
exactly.
trauma.
traumas, you know, so I think that's been one of the biggest takeaways that I've really been happy about, to be able to,
Yeah.
you know, impart that message to people.
We say that with the events that, you know, we went to New York and there's one coming up for Fog Lift. It's important for non-adoptees also to hear, because otherwise we're in this constant cycle with each other. That's how
And
it
it's like an echo
changes.
chamber.
Yeah,
It's
it's an
like an
echo
echo chamber
chamber.
of like, yes, 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 we all know these things. But to move outside of that, I
Mhm.
think it's been really great.
It's Susan, when you and I met, and this has stuck with me, we talked about, you were talking about something that had been going on, and you said something about uh people who were kept having privilege. So now
Mm.
I've kind of said, well, let's just call that what it is, kept privilege. Can you speak to that?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's something that, you know, it's like, you know, white male privilege or straight privilege or all the privileges that people walk around with that we're unconscious of because, you know, we take it for granted, you know, or able-bodied privilege. There's so many different kinds of privileges that we have. And unless those things are taken away or we don't have them to begin with, it's not something that we're even conscious of. It's like the air that we breathe, right?
Mhm.
And so I think people who are not adopted really don't think about these things. They don't think about these things that they take for granted. And I think it's often shocking where they're just like, I never thought about that. You know, I never thought about what it's like not to know your medical history, not to have your birth certificate, not to know your heritage, all these things that, you know, I think it's easy to not, I think one of the markers of privilege is that you're unaware of having it,
Mm-hmm.
that you're
Mhm.
unaware of having a privilege until someone points it out to you. And then you're like, oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah, and it can be, I think some of the exposure to, like, your book is a wonderful read. And so it is a, I don't know what the word is, palpable way for people to go, I love this story. Oh, I can relate to this. Oh, that I didn't know she might have felt like that. Like, I do think there's something in it. This kind of book is a crossover book. Like, I would give this, if this were a book club book and I wasn't adopted, I would love this book,
Well,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
I was invited to a book club. There was about 12 women there, and none of them had a
Mhm.
direct relationship with adoption, zero. And
That's kind of unusual,
It
huh?
is, right?
it is, well, it goes against the data, right? The
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
statistics. But none of them really had they, you know, there might be like a distant cousin or somebody, but it would not, nobody in their direct sphere. And it was very moving to me. It was just that thing that there were things that they had never realized, never thought about, never considered, and they really felt like their eyes had been opened, and that was just incredibly gratifying for me.
It
Yeah.
is it is a good way, I think, for the uninitiated to ease into understanding what adoptees feel, have felt, have gone through, the trauma
Mhm.
we've endured. So it is a good kind of ease into, as opposed to throwing, the baby thief at them and, read this.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
We
It's
don't want
funny.
to throw the BB thief at anybody.
No, I know, I know. And one of the interesting things, like, you
Mhm.
know, as it's been out, you know, longer and longer, certain phrases or themes keep coming back at me, and I'm like, oh, someone else said that too. And one of the things that people keep saying is that it's very readable, and I'm like,
Oh,
and even my daughter, who isn't a big reader, was like, it was really easy to read, Mom. And I'm like, okay, that's good. It's
Yeah.
not, and I think that people mean that it's readable, not just that I use easy to read sentences.
I think what they probably mean is that it's not so harsh, right? There's a lot of
Right.
anger
And
out
it's not
there.
so complicated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward, and it's pretty, you can just read it, and you don't need, there's not a lot of things that that are too challenging. I mean, they're challenging. I think they're things that are challenging for people,
Yeah.
but I think somehow it's something that people feel like they can read.
There's that you have a subtle way of in your writing, which I love, and we love this about A.M. Holmes too, with The Mistress's Daughter. You can take your own story and have like one line at the end of a chapter, or maybe right before the end of the chapter, or maybe in the middle when you're figuring it out, that kind of is like, that is it. It's like the
Mhm.
one line. There's so
Mhm.
many where I'll just be like, okay, that sums up everything in that one line. The rest is a wonderful, readable story. But
Hmm.
there is that line, and that's a gift because it's easy to read, but it's also like, I think about it. Sarah and I finish, you hear us talk about your
Mhm.
chapters in depthly, kind of embarrassingly for us. And whatever we're taking in, but later we think about it. Like I'll think about it longer, like, oh, that
Mhm.
was really interesting, or a cool line, or because it sums up how adoptees feel. So when adoptees are reading it, you're like, yeah. But when
Hmm.
outsiders are reading it, they can be like, that's a good story and that's interesting. I didn't know someone felt that way. And is that how all adoptees feel? I think it goes both ways. So
Mhm.
that's a gift.
Thank you. I mean, and I have to say, none of this was conscious. Like, let me bury some
Right.
little gem of insight in here. It's like, no, I was just
Just
how my
right.
brain works. Do you know what I
Well,
mean?
that's
Yeah.
it's the mark of a writer. I mean, let's face it, that's what writers do. But what I'm happy that you touched on uh your the sadness of your friend committing suicide, and then
Mm,
later your passing thoughts about it. That is
yes.
an important, it's so vital that we get this message out there. And because it's so hard. Like Louise said, when we were interviewed for this mental health podcast that has a reach of millions of people, mental health, and also therapists. Like I just recently found an EMDR therapist who wasn't taught anything about adoption. Like, how is it 2024 and we're still here? And it's a multi-layered answer, not
Mm,
the least of which is that it's a big business. So we have to get these stories out and palpable, if it, however that is. But I'm really, really glad you touched on that, because it's just
mhm.
vital that message gets out there. It's
Yeah.
that adoptive parents hear this and know that they've got to.
And
And it's such
Susan,
a hard thing to hear.
you had that. That's what we were saying out to the guy that was interviewed about the suicidal ideation. If happy adoptees have that, right? Think of down the line, because that's the first time on the podcast I've said out publicly, well, I've had that. I had that my whole life. So telling Sarah, we're both like, we get it, we get it. But like, I'm sure some of my friends are like, I didn't know that. My husband knows that, but
I
very few
think that's
people
one of
know
the
that.
things that people who I know
Hmm.
had a really hard time reading, because
Hmm.
people didn't know or don't know,
Because
and
how can you tell them?
no,
No, you
you can't.
can't.
And it's interesting. I was just um yeah, I was going to write an email to a friend who was living with us at that time, needed a place to stay and was living with us. And I know that he had no idea that this was going on with me, but he gave me this piece of music, and I just played it over and over and over again. It was this very kind of meditative instrumental piano music, but it calmed me, and it gave me a sense of solace. And I just remember playing it over and over and over again, right?
Mm.
And anyway, and he has had this tremendous response to the book. And I just heard that piece of music recently, and it brought me right back to that time and how I just sat and played it on repeat, and I was just in this incredible funk and just listening to this music like in a trance, right? And I was going to write to him and say, you had no idea. You were with me during that time, and you gave me something that was like, it was like a lifeline. Like
Yeah.
it helped me get through my days. And you don't even know, I know you don't even know that.
Mm-hmm.
And that reading the book impacted him so much, and he doesn't even know his part in that. And so I wanted to write him a little thing and thank him, for giving me this thing.
Yeah.
And he had no idea that I listened to it all day long, and what it did for me. Like it gave me something.
You can send him this recording.
Yeah.
We, I was going to say that the suicidal ideation, when Sarah and I talked about that on the podcast, I thought about later that night, the first person I ever exposed that to a little bit was a guy I was madly in love with in high school. And I kind of was flipping out, and he was like, "What is wrong with you?" And he's from such like the tight knit family. All the brothers are the same type of thing. And I said, "I don't know." And I remember being so scared because I told somebody like, "This is how I'm feeling." And then he didn't reject me. He was really loving to me, but I remember the look on his face was like, I mean, he was a young high school guy, right? But his face was like, "You're crazy." Like I saw the look on his face, like, "Wow, she's crazy. I'm not really in love with her. And we've been together a long time. I didn't know she was crazy." I saw that look. So, but then we stayed together. Things go on. I still know him, but I felt like that I should write him a letter and be like, "Listen, he probably didn't even think about it, but to me, it was like a big thing. I thought about it for years. Oh my God, remember when I did that? It was shame."
Yes. One of the things that has been the most surprising to me since the book came out is people from my younger life, high school, college, my college roommate, my college boyfriend, who I literally saw every day, have reached out to me and said, "I had no idea you were going through this. I had no idea you were doing this." And my college boyfriend, it was so funny. He's like, "All I remember is you walking around with this manila envelope, walking around with this manila envelope, like it was like your baby or something." I'm like, "Yes, it was. It was baby me." It was like, and I had all my documents in it.
Oh,
And all my papers and all my notes and everything. And this manila envelope like had my life,
yes.
and it was like, "I just remember that manila envelope, but I had no idea. I didn't know you were leaving campus and going to these meetings in New York City. I had no idea this, that, and my roommate too, that I lived with for a year and a half. She's like, "I had no idea." And then my high school friend was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I
It's
kept things pretty compartmentalized,
Yes.
and I kept them
and
pretty much inside." So a lot of people were like, "Wait, I knew her then. I knew her then. And this is a complete shock to me that this was happening." I'm like, "Yeah, sorry." I mean, like, not sorry, but just that's how it was and thank God I had this from a very young age, from age 18, I had this adoptee community, and I would take everything and pour it out in these meetings, these Alma meetings. And I had people where I felt like they understood, and they could relate and understand to what I was saying. And it's just so interesting. But then when I went back to my regular life, I didn't say anything,
Yeah.
I know for myself, I kept a lot of those feelings to myself because I didn't feel safe to, I kind of, this is a really, not a great analogy, so to speak, but it's kind of like when you with a troop, maybe like if you're going off to war and you've got your little troop, you feel safe with them, and then you get out into the world and you kind of have to put your protective gear on,
Absolutely.
right? So I
Absolutely.
feel like
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing until I found adoptees, which wasn't until, I mean, a group,
Group.
talking about adoption, Louise, and I kept all that stuff to myself. Never would I have told anybody that suicide had entered
No,
my mind. Never.
I never did. I had that one person, and even my best friend Amy, I've talked about it lately with her things. She's like, "I didn't know." I mean, because if you're not an adoptee, you don't get it, sort of. And you also, I didn't get that
Well,
I didn't
people
get
do
it.
get,
Well, right.
there are other people that are suicidal. I don't,
But I mean about our adoption stuff. Like
yeah.
I didn't know how to even say what my stuff was or what, which
No,
is,
there's no words.
there's no
Right. There's
words,
plain, there's not a language for it.
which is back to like, you were so young. And so this,
Yeah.
you were sort of, even though we know you, it was like, you were a different Susan. Like you were like a heroine in this book for me. Like,
Oh,
wow, she was so young
You
and
were
like,
so bold. It
so bold.
was
I'm getting on the bus. I'm going on the, like going to
very,
the hospital.
really impressive and bold.
Yeah. You
I
remind
don't
me of
have any,
Margaret, right?
like
Katz,
what?
Margaret Katz from American Baby. You're like bold, you know, like,
I just had, yeah, and I had no, it's so funny, like looking back on it, I don't have any, like, who was that person? And it's like, but that was it, you know? I mean, it's funny, like like my boyfriend in college, we were really close. We saw each other every single day, except when I got on the bus and went to New York. But he's got a very few mentions in the book, but one is like, he's like, I don't want you to get hurt. And I say, I was already hurt. I already,
Hmm.
and I needed to do this, but I got this sense he was being very protective, that he felt very uncomfortable with me doing this because it seemed like a can of worms to him, and it was, of course it was, but I got very quickly that it made him uncomfortable to talk about it, and so I was like, okay, there's going to be other people that I'm going to talk to about it,
it does make people uncomfortable. I've had,
Did it,
yeah.
well, I'm wondering, did it make him uncomfortable because of the potential of the relationship changing? And
I think he didn't want to see me get hurt, and he saw that there was potential for great hurt here,
Mhm.
and I think that was it. I don't think there was anything really complicated about it. It was just that this seems like a risky proposition, this seems
yeah,
like something that could be hard and chaotic and painful, and why not just avoid that?
We just interviewed Ken a few weeks ago, and he said, when he went to look, he deliberately, because he's a pleaser. Many of us are pleasers, right? So you instantly want to jump into something and do it, but he's like, I methodically thought about, if I find my birth mother, go down this route, you can't close the door. This is going to change my life. And that's the big thing about, especially for young people, because they get on or you're searching and maybe you're not prepared. That's why you were so young. You had so many wits about you. And you really, because for me, it took a lot longer to come into that. So it's just very impressive in that way, because you really were bold. I mean, just the sense of any moment could be such a rejection. It was like,
You know,
know,
I think about the impact that books had on me. Of course, the Anna Fisher book was,
mm,
I really, really think about that book, and that moment changed the course of my life. It really did. Reading about the life of another adoptee. I was only 13 years old,
gosh, that's
reading
really
about
incredible. I mean,
who
right?
really claimed that identity of adoptee, and also was trying very hard to find, her records, very, very similar. And it rocked my world. It was incredible. And what if I had not found that book? I could have
Mm,
gone AIDS, and nothing, what I mean?
yeah.
It would have
yeah.
been very different. And, I think about that, but then I think about another book that I read when I was in college. When I was starting to search, I found another book, and it was the case studies of the UK adoptees, who were interviewed after records were opened there. And there were these case studies, and I think there was like 10 of them, and 8 of them were kind of horrible. Like they were like, people found just terrible things, like, a lot of mental illness, some suicide, um, outright rejection. I mean, just like it was not pleasant, right?
Hmm.
And then 2 of them ended up with good situations. And I really thought about that very carefully. I thought about all the 8 horrible situations. And I was like, if I find this, do I want to keep going? do I want to do this no matter what? And the answer was always yes. It was like, I just
Mhm.
need to know. I just need to know. And if it's going to be one of these awful things, okay, I'm going to deal with it. And I felt like I tried to set myself up with the lowest possible expectations
Mhm.
that, you know, that it could be something really, really terrible. And I tried to brace myself for that. And I think that really helped me, you know, to go into it with my eyes as open as possible. I mean, there's nothing in those case studies that remotely echoed my situation. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't expect this. I didn't expect something that was so up and down, back
Yeah.
and forth for decades. That is something I was not expecting. And I had a hard time dealing with. But it was the situation and I had to deal with it, you know.
There probably weren't really long-term case studies to, you know,
At
like
at that
remember,
No.
time, there
remember the
weren't.
Michael Apted movies where he
Right.
would go to 7-Up and then all that, you
Yes,
know,
yes, yes, yes.
Right.
but it would be interesting to do that with
It sure
adoption,
would.
but you were kind of, you know, there weren't studies like that. So it is like charting new territory
Okay.
and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, before I forget, one thing that really was so moving in the book, I don't know why this stuck out to me, was the boy in your class when you found out that he was adopted.
Oh,
Oh my gosh, it
yeah.
just that I could, I have tears thinking about it.
Yeah.
It was so moving.
Yeah.
Um, and
I,
just that understanding of each other, you know, that you just don't
It's like
have
two
with anybody
souls
else.
connecting at a young age, having that, like, you see that you and the other, but you're not even like friends or whatever. How, what
well,
happened with him? Do you know anything or
I
just,
do, I
oh,
do. Well, he just passed away last year,
Mm.
no.
and his sister reached out to me on Instagram. And she was like, "Oh, I see that you have this book out." And I just, you know, I follow anybody that I know is an adoptee. And I was like, "Oh my God." And I said, "Have you read it yet?" And she said, "No." And I said, "You know, your brother's in it." And she was like, "What? You're kidding." And I'm like, "Oh boy." Oh boy, you know. And she said, "I'm so glad that he was even able to talk to you then back in junior high
Mm.
or whatever it was." And she said that he was not able to really explore that part of him,
Mm.
and that was really hard, and that it impacted him in a way that was really hard. And that I think she went on to search and found her birth family. She was also adopted.
Oh, so two non-related adoptees in the
Mhm.
same family. Okay.
Yes, yes. And I was not that aware of her. I mean, I think I knew that she was adopted, but she was several years younger than
Yeah.
us. And
Different
so I didn't
grade.
really, I mean, I knew who she was, but we didn't really have very much contact. And oh boy, that just really, really moved me to hear from her. And she was like, "Is it going to make you cry? Is it going to make me cry when I read it?" And I said, "Probably, yeah."
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
makes me cry to
It's
think about it.
makes me
Yeah. It
cry and
makes
I don't
me
even
cry.
know them. So
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, you know. And so I'm really hoping that I can set up a reading back there, so I'll be able to meet her in person.
Yeah.
But that just yeah.
Well, and you don't know who you're touching. This is why we do this, the podcast and your book. We've from the beginning, Sarah and we've had letters. I have a high school friend who wrote me about big stuff. I didn't know. We sat next to each other all the time. And she's like, "I listen to your podcast.
Yes.
I've gone through." I'm like, I had no idea.
That's
And
right. That's right. I
you,
think when we share these things,
mhm.
I think it really I think it really shocks people, or it's like, what is going, that thing of like, be kind because you don't know what people are going through, you know. I'm
mhm.
paraphrasing, you know,
Mhm.
that phrase, but it's so true that you don't know what people are going through. And that is the thing that we just don't know, we don't realize. And people are living these lives, and there's so much going on internally that we just don't talk about in everyday life,
Yeah.
either as young people or even now, you know. It's one person, it's so funny, said, a coworker said, I read your book, and I said, mm-hmm. And it's so personal. I said, mm-hmm. And they said, are you sure it's okay that I'm reading this? And I'm like, well, I did publish it, so it's got to be okay.
It's
But I think they were a little taken aback that now they know all these things about me that are kind of deep.
Yes.
I
And
had that experience at work. Our main boss at where I work, she said, my podcast is, she downloads it, for to help us out, and she'll listen to it, but not always, I don't think. But she said to me, it's so personal. How do you put that out there? It's so personal. I'm like, it's what we
yes,
need to do.
yes, yes. But I think for people who don't do this on a regular basis, it's a little shocking.
Even for us, if it's a little, I have a group in my area of adoptees that we're all getting to be better friends and closer. We meet all the time. It's wonderful. Central Coast Adoptees, if you're looking in the area. When you first show up, and if people do listen, it's a little weird because they know so much about you before you meet them. And you're like, oh God, what have I said down there? Like, it is like that. It's because we are sort of, I guess when you write your book, you're going around seeing everybody. And Sarah and I just went and met adoptees for the first time in New York in a big group like that. And it is kind of weird that people know so much about you. Like these women standing there were like, oh, I know. And you and Sarah, and they started talking like us and knowing our thing. I'm like, oh my God. It's a strange feeling, right? Because we do put so much out there, but we're also in a little bit of a vacuum with ourselves because we're on Zoom, we're interviewing somebody that's very deep and personal for us. We put it out there and we don't focus on it, but there's a lot
But
out
we
there.
feel like we're in this little room together, the three of us,
Exactly.
like sitting in this little pod, and we're just talking, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh, but other people are gonna be, other people are kind of like got their ear to the wall
Yeah.
listening.
And for
And
and for as many people as it may not hit with, or they don't like it or push back, it's for the one person who goes, I thank you. I'm so glad that happened. I'm so glad I heard that, or she said that, or for the book that you're reading. So many people followed along with your book with us.
Yes,
that's
we did.
amazing. That's amazing.
Although
That's
we have heard from a few people, like, I had to just finish it. I couldn't like put it down. So
well,
We're
I was
pretty,
wondering,
yeah.
especially the most recent was like, oh my God, spoilers, spoilers. But I guess if people are reading along, then
Most people passed us, I think, because we're very in control of we want to keep reading. I like stop myself, but
you're incredible. It's amazing. Oh, so I guess we should talk about questions. There's so many times where you're like, I wonder what Susan blah blah blah, and you have some question, and I'm like, listen, this is the answer. And
you're yelling at us.
I'm yelling at my phone when I'm listening, and I'm like, this is it. And of course you can't hear me, so
it's been so fun and rewarding to read your book, and I've just loved every minute of it. I guess I have was there, you've had all positive feedback. Has there been any kind of
Mm.
negative pushback from people not in the adoptee community? Or even in the adoptee community? It's all been good, right?
I think people are kind of I'm sure there are people who have negative responses. I'm sure they're out there, but they have not let me know, which
I don't mean in terms of a review. I mean in terms of, well, hey, wait a minute, what is this trauma you speak of?
no, 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 no. I mean, I think the thing is, I feel like, I don't know, whatever it is, the whole thing of writers are like show, don't tell. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's kind of how I write. It's a
Mhm.
lot of showing,
Me
and
too.
it's not a lot of telling.
Mhm.
And I think I'm just showing you my experience. Here it is. You can draw your own conclusions. You can see what you say. And I feel like there's not a whole lot to argue with. I'm
Yeah.
not saying a lot of, you should think this, or you should take this away from
No,
it.
it's your authentic
Conclusion.
story.
This is my
Mhm.
experience. I'm just showing you.
Mhm.
And think what you think, or
It's a really great way to, I mean, it's the way you write and it's who you are, but
Yeah.
it's also a really great, like I said earlier, entry
It
into
is.
understanding and nothing offensive. It's not this angry, I abolish all adoption. It's not that road. So
yeah, and I might even feel that way
you're right.
inside, but mm, no, yeah. I mean, I feel like I've been pretty, I don't know, so far, it hasn't been that long. It's only been out, I don't know, 4 months, 5 months. Anything's possible. So we'll
It's
see.
done very well. It's gotten a few awards. It's up for, tell us.
Well, it's up for, this is next week. Am I going next week? I think week after
Next,
next.
yeah.
Yeah, the National Book Critics Circle Award. And that is like pretty stunning to me. And that whole thing,
Big.
it's an honor just to be nominated. I'm like shocked. I'm honestly shocked, but
That is amazing.
We're
going
not
to
shocked.
deserved.
We are not shocked.
a friend of mine was like, I Googled what are the odds of being up for this nomination? And they were like 52,000 books were published
Whoa.
in 2023. So
Come
they're
on.
like 52, that's the ratio of like what you've got a 1 in 52,000 chance of this happening. And I was like, oh my God.
Ah,
It
Okay,
is
we-
just
Anyway, but
big.
literally it is an honor just to be nominated, and I'm just super grateful. And I'm nervous to be there. I kind of like don't want to have to give a speech. So I'm kind of like, no, don't pick me, don't pick me. I don't want to have to give a speech. But
But pick you. I think.
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
I don't know.
the adoptees are rooting for you.
Thank you. But I made a point of like getting all the other books in my category, and they're really outstanding. So I feel like I'm in just incredible company, and everybody deserves recognition.
Neat,
One of
Susan.
them is
That's
actually really close friend of mine, and another is
Oh.
like a sort of close friend of mine. So it's like it's very weird that yeah, A Secret Harvest is an incredible book by David Matsumoto, and it's about like a hidden relative that nobody knew about
Really?
for decades. It's an incredible book, and it's illustrated by one of my closest friends, Patricia
I'll have
Wakita,
to look at
and
that.
it's really, really beautiful. It's called Secret Harvest, and it's an incredible book. So I would be overjoyed if it won, and then the other books are just amazing as well. So
Well, at least you'll have fun there because you'll be with friends too. That's cool.
I will have fun. I'm hoping that I will have fun. I was stressing a lot about what to wear, and I figured that out. And I actually watched the YouTube of last year's, and I'm like, oh, okay, phew. It's not like the Academy Awards. This is good.
no, these are writers, not
These are
actors.
writers, and people pretty much look like writers, and it's like in this
Yes.
auditorium, and it's not big tables with
Right.
doing like reaction shots of everybody as the
Right.
winner gets spoken. So
So can you maybe is there any place that like do you have any readings coming up that listeners could go to that are
Oh,
coming up
yes.
in
The next-
April? Your
yes,
April.
the next well, the next big one, oh yeah, so yes, okay. I have one coming up in Portland in March next week, but let's see. April. Oh, in April, I will be at the ASAC conference, which is the Alliance for the
Oh.
Study of Adoption and Culture, which is my personal favorite adoption conference because it really features adoptee scholars, researchers, creative people, artists.
Oh, neat.
It's really all about the study of adoption and culture in every way. It's so, and it makes me feel like we're serious people. I mean, like you should take us seriously, not that we're
Right.
serious people, but you should take us seriously because we are contributing to culture and art and science and research about adoption, and it's
Important.
and it's important, and we are like taking agency over these fields. It's
Mhm.
not other people writing about us or studying,
Exactly.
doing data around us. So I just love that conference, and it makes me feel really proud of adoptee
Neat.
scholars and creative people. It's really
I
good.
didn't know about that.
Where is it and when
Yeah.
is it?
It's April 4 to 6 at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island.
Mhm.
And I'm going to be speaking on a panel of adoptees and aging, which I think
Oh,
is really, really important topic
yeah.
because, and I'm going to be speaking with 3 adoptees. Three of us are named Susan, and then one is named Mark. So Susan DeVan Harness, Sue Harris O'Connor, myself, and Mark Hagland. And we're all, in our 60s plus,
Mhm.
and talking about how adoption changes and shifts as we age and as we grow older, and how it impacts us through all the decades of our lives. And
Will this be recorded? Do you have any idea?
no, I'm not sure. I am
Mhm.
not sure. I don't know. I have to find out. I'm not sure. But it's a really tremendous conference. I don't know if it's biannual. But it's a really good one. So Google it. And also there's a journal called the Journal of Adoption and Culture, which is published by my same publisher, Ohio State University Press. And it's a really beautiful, thoughtful journal on issues of adoption and culture, which are it's so good. Like really, really analyzing film, books.
Oh, I'm glad you're
Um,
turning us on to this because we can put this
Yeah,
in our
well,
show
if,
notes.
if we could get the links, that would be great.
I'll send you the links. It's
Yeah.
a really important journal, and it's just like this is something we should take
Right.
seriously. This is like
Yes.
serious thought, and it's for critical adoption studies. There are a number of faculty around the country and around the world who are. This is a very serious area of inquiry and
Mhm.
study, and yeah, it makes me feel really proud to be part of that.
Yeah, I'm glad we asked because I didn't even know about this. I think I
didn't
saw
either.
you
So
posted on Twitter, but I didn't realize really what it is.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to the
Yeah.
conference because if
yeah,
you want, and you can see the program, and the program is really astounding. It's really impressive, and yeah, it's great, and it's great to be with other adoptees who are um really taking this seriously and
hmm
Mhm.
making our voices heard in the world in a way that okay, I hate to use this word with legitimacy. It's a terrible word to use in this context, but like, we're not just, I don't know, spouting off our mouths. We're doing serious stuff around this,
Yeah.
and we're thinking about it in a serious way. And these things really impact us all. And so, yeah, I really, it's my favorite.
that's great. Susan, thank you so much for providing us such a wonderful book. And
Oh my gosh. I do have a question. So
Oh,
Kaz
please
really
ask.
didn't know you existed that whole time? He didn't know you were the
No,
sister? Okay.
no, that's
Like,
what
was there a secret thing to that? Okay.
no, that's what he said. That's what he said. And it seems hard to imagine, given all these clues about me all over everywhere, but that's what he said.
All
well,
right.
I can say it could be a younger boy thing because once driving in the car with my son, he was staring off into the distance and I said, what are you thinking about? And he goes, Mom, I think you think I'm, having all these deep thoughts, but really I'm just staring out into space. So I think maybe that applies to Kaz.
Could be so. Could be so. Yeah.
All
We're
right. Well,
okay. No. I was just saying if there are any other burning questions, I'm going to go back and listen to some of them because I know that there were questions,
There was a couple.
and
we
I
could
would
always do a
like.
little addendum,
No,
to add.
no. It's okay. I'll just email you and just be like, you were wondering about this. Well,
Oh, and the baby. We recently read a few episodes ago of the baby that you were carrying around. What was up with
Oh,
that
yeah.
situation? So you were
And when you
comforting
went
the
to
baby.
the
at
the
the Tyco.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I just happened to be there. Um, and the mother of the baby was doing some documentary film or something, and the baby needed caring. Needed.
And was she just totally unconcerned? I think that's what we were talking about, that thing with kept people. Maybe she just, it's not a worry or something. I don't, yeah.
Not a big deal.
I can't handle hearing a baby cry at all. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well,
Well,
this
I
is,
hope
yeah.
we're going to be following along with what you're doing, and I hope we'll stay in touch, obviously.
Obviously.
Yes.
Have to
Yes.
now. I just want to thank you both. It has been like profoundly moving for me to have you read so thoughtfully and so carefully. And I haven't had this kind of conversation with anybody, I don't think, where every single chapter is like dissected with such love and care and such attention. And there's some quote that, attention is a form of love. And I have felt so loved and seen. And it's just been so meaningful for me to have that attention and that such careful reading. It's really meant so much to me. And I look forward to it every week. And my husband and I listen together, and he's like, oh, they picked that up. Oh, wow. And we're both like exclaiming and
We've given him some shout outs. We're like, he's cool. He's
making noise.
has your back, right?
Sure does. He really does. Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, thank you, because
We
it's
wouldn't have been able to do it
right.
without such a deep, thoughtful,
Gift.
well-written,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful prose. I mean, just beautiful. And that's not
Yeah.
always the case. So it was such a joy for
It was
us.
a joy to read. Really.
Yeah.
We're gonna grieve it. So
Yes.
I'm gonna
Well,
give it to people. I think it's a great,
Oh,
I think it
yeah.
is a great gift. There's
Mm-hmm.
certain books you like to gift now, and this is one of them. So
that means so much to me. Thank you.
it's true.
Thanks, Susan. We'll
Thanks,
talk to you
Susan.
soon.
Okay. Thank you. Take good care.
Big
Take
hug.
care.
Big hug.
Big hug.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.